Okay, welcome everyone. Dana Louise Williams here. I'm so excited. I have this fantastic um, woman that's had an experience that I was bursting with excitement when I found out about her. And so Erica Mckenzie has inspired me to do a YouTube series where I will be interviewing more people similar to what she's experienced, and very gifted healers and psychics as well. And this interview series is called Evolve Back to Love. And who better to be my first person to interview than Erica Mckenzie, because she completely had an experience where she literally evolved back to love. And her message is to spread that message far and wide to everyone on the planet. And I'm so excited to be one of the messengers to bring Erica Mckenzie to you. So, Erica, would you please tell our viewers your story, and everybody just sit back and be wowed by what she experienced?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, thank you so much, so much. It's just really with heartfelt gratitude for having me, because it's so important while we're here on this journey to get these kinds of messages out, in hopes to help others. So thank you again for your time. And, really, for the sake of the time that we have today, I'm going to condense it. There's a lot more, and, hence that's why I was really led to write the book, Dying to Fit In, is my book, because there was just so much that happened to me that really led up to these series of events that day that I died 15 years ago now. And so basically it all boiled down to, I didn't feel like I was good enough. I didn't feel like I was good enough in my home life. I didn't feel like I was, measuring up and good enough in my social life in school, with my peers. Every aspect, I seemed to be around this energy that followed me, making me feel like I just couldn't measure up. And, as a young girl, I didn't have the tools or the wisdom at that time to really understand how to help myself, to, rid myself of this toxic way of thinking. And so I started to do things that I thought would help me to let go, to release myself, to get away from this feeling of you're not measuring up, you're not good enough, no matter what you do. And one of those things started in junior high. I had an eating disorder. I developed bulimia, which is binging and purging of your food. And that was a tool. It was unhealthy. I recognize that looking back now, but at the time, I didn't know that. I just felt like that was an escape, a tool I could use to get focused off of the fact I was trying so hard in all these aspects of my life, but getting the same result, not measuring up. And, the thing was, it was interesting. I remember some of my earliest childhood memories being 5 years old in kindergarten, and really looking at my peers and understanding that, yeah, you know what? We are all different. We're completely different. But yet, at the same time, that difference was really imperative. It was important. And not only that, it was beautiful. And that's what love was as a child. I learned that lesson. And who did I learn it from? I learned it from this voice, this energy, a spirit that I couldn't see with my eyes, but I could feel it, and I knew it. I recognized it as if I had always known it. And I call this spirit God. And I want to just be clear when I say that, because I'm not saying that's the only name for it. But for me, growing up in organized religion, it was like I had a sister, Sarah, and a mom and a dad, they had names. And then in organized religion, I learned about Jesus and I learned about God. And so I just remember calling it God, this knowing, these downloads, this information, all-encompassing love that reiterated to me that, yes, we were all different, but it was so important. And we were to love those differences. And so I really grew up seeing how cool, it was like, the really smart kids, it was cool. It wasn't nerdy. It wasn't stupid. It wasn't dumb. It was important. And just really frustrated by the fact that I couldn't understand, by the time we got to junior high, why were we getting picked on for being this, whatever you call it, different, not normal, whatever that means, right? And so it really carried on throughout my life, this theme of trying to fit in, going through high school, making it through high school, but then going on to college and hoping that things would change. And yes, there was nice people, and there was people that were embracing of each other's gifts, but there was still this underlying theme of, you're not good enough, you're not normal. And, just really looking at media, which can be a healthy, awesome thing. But for me, I let it kind of twist that and keep me in that pattern way of thinking, the toxic, you're not good enough, you don't look like this, you're not thin enough, you're not, this. And so it was so frustrating for me, and out of desperation, I ended up doing something that was more toxic, that ended up being deadly than the bulimia. So I stopped the bulimia after 12 years and replaced it with a class 4 narcotic at the time, a diet pill concoction. It was made up of 2 diet pills, fen-phen and phentermine, and Redux. And, these were lethal, ended up being a lethal combination for a lot of people. There was a class action lawsuit. People died. You're supposed to be on them, a drug for weight loss under doctor's supervision for 3 months at the most. So it was really designed for not long-term use, but short-term use. And not being on a controlled substance that was addictive before, I didn't even realize at the time that I was so addicted to it that I would do anything. And I didn't even need to lose weight at this point. It was like I was trying to use this to stuff those feelings of, not being good enough. And 3 months, you're supposed to be on the pills. I hid that secret from everyone, my family, everyone. 9 years. I took it for almost 9 years. So you can imagine physiologically what happened to me and my body. And that's really what led till that day that I died. I had all kinds of health issues. I mean, my lungs, they were forgetting how to do something that we all take for granted. We don't even think about breathing. Every time we breathe, we don't think about it. We just do it. It just happens. And my lungs were so damaged that it was like they weren't remembering. The signal wasn't going from the brain to tell the lungs. And my heart was having the same kind of issues. It was like my heart was working so hard it couldn't remember how to do something so natural. Pumping blood, circulation, those kind of things. And, it got so bad that I remember that day that I died, as I'm losing consciousness, just really coming to terms with knowing that I did this to myself. I could have stopped so many times taking it, but I just kept telling myself, it was like I was bargaining. God, I know I have a problem, just give me one more day and then things will be better. I'll make a change. And I never got there. And so I remember taking my last breath knowing that there was no return. I had really damaged my body to no end. And this was it. And it was incredible because I'm having those feelings, trying to rationalize it, and then taking my last breath, which I was horrified of dying. I was in organized religion, I was raised to believe you're a sinner, not a winner. So you would be judged when you die. So I was terrified. So there was this whole aspect of, oh my God, I don't want to die. I'm going to be judged. I've sinned so much. I'm like so not perfect that if anybody was going to be judged, I was sure it was me. And so there was that terrifying aspect as I'm losing consciousness that, oh my God, no, I'm not ready yet. And then as it's happening, the reality for me was, it was, instead of being painful and scary, horrific, it was the most incredible feeling. And honestly, it's like from this point of my story on, it's very hard to articulate in human words that I know of, to give it the magnitude of the things that I experienced and I saw. So that's a frustrating aspect. So I do my best, but it was, I just, one thing I want to share with people was it wasn't painful. I felt for that first moment, as that last breath went through me and I let go, I felt alive for the first time. And it was like I was all encompassing of myself. I was finally able to access my entire self. And, I'm floating up to the ceiling and I'm looking down at my lifeless, this shell, my body. And I knew that was me on the ground, but I had this feeling, this knowing, well, that's me, but this is really me. And it was exhilarating. It was the most amazing, energizing, alive feeling. And I remember, letting go and being enveloped in a tunnel, and it was light, very bright, but it didn't hurt my eyes, nothing like the sort. And I traveled at the most incredible supersonic speed through this tunnel. And I have no clue how long I was in the tunnel, because this is one of the challenges in my experience in sharing the story is, as soon as I left my body, time did not exist as you and I have learned to know time, right? And so it's so different. I have no idea, but if nothing else would have happened to me that day, I would have been completely happy with staying in that tunnel. That's how amazing it was, because there was this overwhelming, in an incredible way, feeling of love, all being filled with every ounce of my being. Love was pouring in. And that love, with it came this complete knowing. I've known this. I've known this love before. And so I'm traveling supersonic speed, and I get to almost the top because I can see this clearing, this space that almost looks like space, the dark with the stars and stuff at the end. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm getting to the end. And as soon as I had this knowing of, I'm at the end of the tunnel, and I'm out. And there had been a being on my right side that had accompanied me, and I felt the being exiting, and I'm standing there, and I was delivered at that time into the hands of God. Now, while I couldn't see God's hands like you and I know, if you see my physical hand like this, it didn't matter. It's this whole communication aspect with the mind. It's a telepathic knowing and communicating. And so at that time, I couldn't see God's physical hands, but I could feel God taking his hands, his arms, and wrapping, giving a hug around me. And as that happened, I'm standing out in space. All the stars are around me, and God and I are together. And I have this incredible feeling that I'm home. I'm finally home. So as soon as I had this feeling, and I'm feeling all of this love, okay, it was love, that's when the lessons began. And for me, it was 2 life reviews. And the first one started by, I heard this whirring kind of sound in my left ear of a vintage projector. And all of a sudden, I'm looking in front of me, and I'm seeing the stars, and they're doing something. They're coming together, and they're making this really tall curtain. So I'm watching, and as the curtain starts opening, reveals the biggest movie screen you could imagine is right in front of me, and God is standing by me, and we're watching a movie screen. I hear the whirring sound in the projector and the countdown, 3, 2, 1, the life review of Erica Mckenzie. And then on the screen, I see myself. My mother was holding me in the hospital the day I was born, as a baby. And so that was the first image that I could identify with on this life review that I proceeded to have. And so God and I stood together, and I saw every event in my life from that day I was born until the day that I died. And I remember things sticking out for me, which were what mankind would label as milestone events. I remember losing my first tooth in first grade, those kind of things. I remember awards, a spelling bee that I had gotten in elementary school, working hard with spelling, and you have a contest, right? I remember 8th grade graduation, because that's what we had at our small school. All of these kinds of accolades and accomplishments. And I remember feeling each time that I would see these things, it was a great feeling, and there was love involved, those kinds of things. So it wasn't negative, and that started to become a concern to me, because again, even though we are in this other realm and I have access to so much more. At the same time, I was able to completely know I'm Erica Mckenzie and I had this life down here. And I knew that there were things that I had done, a lot of things that I had done that were not, love wasn't attached to them, right? And so I started kind of thinking about that. And then I started kind of thinking about, oh my gosh, in organized religion, I was raised to believe that I would be judged. So as we're getting closer to that day that I died, I'm sitting here going, okay, I was waiting to be judged. I knew it was coming, right? I was expecting it because I knew I wasn't perfect. But sure enough, we get to that day that I died and I wasn't judged. And how could that be possible? If that was true, what I learned, how could it be possible when I had messed up so much that I wasn't judged? Instead of that judgment, I felt this most incredible pouring in. It was like I was a big human sponge, if you will. And all of this love was like liquid, okay? And it's pouring in and it's filling up the sponge, and the sponge is so full, it's like it can't take any more love. It's so incredible. Love, that was it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you really love me, right? And as I'm having these thoughts at the end, all of a sudden appeared in front of me this pair of eyeglasses, okay? Now, I never wore eyeglasses my whole life until about a year ago for reading. But these glasses were not like anything I'd ever seen because they were the size of a small car, a vehicle. That's how big they were. And I remember looking at these glasses right in front of me, thinking, oh my God, those are huge. And as I'm having this thought, then God is telling me, telepathic communication, put them on, right? And I'm thinking, there's no way, look how big they are. There's no way I'm gonna get these on. As soon as I have this thought that I can't do it, I feel my arms drawing the glasses near and pulling them onto my face. And do you know that by the time they got onto my face, they fit perfectly. It's no problem. And as I got them on and I'm looking around, then I hear this sound again, and I knew what that sound was. It was that vintage sound projector, the whirring. And all of a sudden, the stars line up once more, and then the curtain, it parts. And here's that screen, the life review of Erica Mckenzie. Me in the hospital as a baby, the same picture. So there you go. I'm thinking, oh my God, of course. I've been so bad that I'm going to have a whole life review just for all the bad stuff. I was just terrified because those glasses that I was given, I could see what I couldn't see the first time on my own. I was seeing them through God's eyes. And so as this life review begins, sure enough, nothing at all was the same as the first life review. It was completely different. And this time, what I saw was what is important to God, not mankind. So you see, the first life review, while those things, those accomplishments, those milestones, those accolades, they were wonderful things. But the point was, those were not the things and why we're here on Earth School that are important to God. And so just for time's sake, there were several things I saw, but basically, things like I remember when I was little and sitting on this elderly woman's lap in the nursing home and singing Jesus Loves Me and brushing her hair. And there was this love that she was given that she needed, right? Or, helping someone with their groceries into their car because they didn't have to, they were injured or whatever and they needed help. Rescuing animals. Giving love and support to people who are torn down by others for not fitting in. Go figure, So everything that I saw this time was love. It was a product of love. And love was the medicine. It was the answer. And I started really coming to appreciate this by the time I got to the end of that life review. And it's funny because I thought, okay, here I am and I'm being filled with love as I'm seeing this love exchange and I'm going up until that day that I die. and I get this feeling, again, this human feeling of not measuring up. I have to be judged. I was ingrained that I have to be judged. I'm a sinner. I'm not perfect. And really worrying because not seeing it for the second time, and having that feeling, it was immediately replaced with unconditional love. And again, it was a thing that I felt like I was being filled up so much with this love, and no judgment was present with the love. There was no judgment that I didn't know if I could receive anymore. I really felt like I was going to burst, but it was an incredible, amazing feeling. I never wanted to leave, ever again. I knew I was home. I knew I was home. So it was one of those things that I had this knowing that I wanted to stay. I had no desire to go back. But if I did have to go back, people needed to know about this. People need to know. Don't be afraid that it's not at all what I was raised to believe. And it's going to be okay. And also to help people understand what really mattered. Why we're here, to kind of help people with that. And so, the lessons, they just continued. I mean, there were so many lessons that God and I shared because I had a lot to learn. And one of the biggest things that I really want people to know out of, sharing my story is that I came to understand that each and every one of us, not just some of us, are so important to God. Our uniqueness is our value. Our value is our contribution here while we're on our earthly journey. And so God was taking all of this time, there's the word for humans, time with me, teaching me all these lessons. But I was no one special. I was just the same as you and anybody else. We were all the same, and that's how much God loves each and every one of us. So that was really important to learn. And like I said, the lessons continued after that. We had the lesson of the rippling effect and having to really come to terms and understand what that meant for myself, for individuals, and for our planet. And going on from the rippling effect, having the lesson then of the gifts. And for me, having that lesson of the gifts really helped me to understand what I had been doing, this pattern I started having in my life that was toxic and hurting myself. It really had me have a whole new appreciation on a greater level of why it was important to do the work, to identify the work, which is different for everyone, to get healthy and balance yourself, body, mind, and spirit. And it starts with loving yourself. And there's work that we do so that we can access it. I couldn't all those, the whole time until I died. And so really understanding what that meant and understanding that with our gifts, each of us are born with them. And through our life, there's more gifts for each and every one of us. We just have to ask. But then when we ask, we have to be prepared to be quiet and listen so that we can receive those gifts. And the gifts are important. Because along with the work and getting to know yourself, how, you function, what's good for you, all those things together will allow you to access your blueprint so that you can not only do the work on the mission that you're here to do, but along with that, in order to have this connection, to stay connection so that you can hear the divine's voice, you have to be able to take care of yourself. And that's where, people like you're so important, because helping people like myself to stay healthy, to recognize what works for them and learning about that and embracing that will help keep that whole line open. Connection with the divine.
I got a question for you. It's two-part. So the first part of the question is, does God make mistakes? And the second part will draw our listeners in to you being dyslexic. Now, could you talk about that from the point of view of, and I don't believe that God makes mistakes, that dyslexia pattern was something that was going to unfold into your unique gifts of receiving those gifts. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I have a child that has dyslexia, and it's not an easy thing.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, well, first of all, to answer, does God make mistakes? Well, one thing I've learned out of all of this is to be very mindful of, I mean, this has been 15 years ago, and there isn't a day that I don't go over all of these events that happened to me in my mind, because I'm continuously learning. There's lessons in all of it for myself, as well as sharing with others. But what I've learned is to be mindful of not assuming that anything, just all I can do is report what happened to me, and that's what it is, and learn from it. And so there was never a time that I was with God that God articulated to me, I make mistakes. God never said that God revealed to make mistakes. But what I felt the whole time that I had this experience in heaven with God was that everything that had happened to me up until that day that I died was all part of this plan. And it wasn't in any way a mistake, an accident, a freak thing. It wasn't to be looked at like that. What it was when we go through life and things happen to us, good, bad, ugly, horrific, doesn't matter. What are we going to do with that experience that happens? Because there is this moment for us, each of us, to choose to not let it become a roadblock, right? To embrace that, learn from that, and then go on. And maybe not right away. Again, time is really, we have to be careful about time, because we like to hold everything to a schedule and to time, and that's when we can kind of get into trouble, because it's our timing and God's timing are two totally different things, and we can make those things become our biggest strengths. We don't have all the answers at the time, but again, that's why it's so important that I share with people to always address the body, mind, and spirit for yourself, and not just focus on just like one aspect of it only, because it's through maintaining that balance that you'll be able to start to see that the things that you went through weren't for nothing. You aren't this bad person that deserves whatever and that happened at all. That it is just, it's in the wiring of your blueprint, and you can use it as a strength. And so for me, one of the things, yes, it was dyslexia. I had, I was left-handed, and I was in a school at the time that, they didn't want you to be left-handed. So I was kind of fighting that because I couldn't use my right hand for anything. I did everything with my left hand. So I'm trying to come to terms with, well, here's my left hand, I'm using this. So there was that challenge. And then there was the challenge of, I didn't know it was called dyslexia at the time, wasn't diagnosed until, a few years ago. But yeah, having that dyslexia for me, and I feel like also I have the ADD part too, was looked at as really, these are bad things you're doing. You're doing this, it's bad, and I was like at times pulled from the room and put into a special group or whatever, but it wasn't looked at as special, as unhappy. It was kind of like, we don't know what else to do with these people, there's something wrong. And so, yeah, it was a complete challenge. It was frustrating. School was hard for me. I had tutors all through school. And then it's funny, I come back from having this near-death experience and having to do the work to get healthy first. And, raising my kids because they were just babies at the time. And then when God said, you need to write a book, you need to tell your story. And I thought, okay, I can't write. You've seen what's happened to me my whole life. This is the human part of me, right? And I thought, well, gosh, I'll just get a publisher and I'll just have them do it for me. And, I can just tell it, because speaking was my gift. It wasn't writing. But you see, what I learned was it's so important as we identify our uniqueness, our unique blueprint, our work is not going to look the same as someone else's. And so part of my work I came to understand, because I tried to put a, dance around it, but it didn't matter. It kept coming back to me. So finally I said, fine, I'll write it. Part of my work at the time, in order to move forward, was to heal from the aspect that dyslexia was not at all an obstacle. It was actually a gift. And so I'm not saying everybody with dyslexia go out and write a book. What I'm saying is, for me, what happened was God said, write it down. Write down everything you can remember, your experience. Let go of, I can't do it. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a professional. I'm not a writer, blah, 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 that I'm not good enough. Remember what I taught you in heaven of the gifts. We each have these gifts, and sometimes it takes that leap of faith to just dive into something and to be patient with yourself. It took me years to get my book, where it is now, published. I self-published it in 2015, the spring of 2015. And so it was a huge healing for me, because I did it. I wrote it, and I was told I couldn't do that kind of stuff, and I told myself that as I was writing it. And so now it's like, I did that work myself. I showed myself that that's not the case, that I can, and it made me so much stronger, and I could let go of that hurt and that pain and that roadblock. I broke open the roadblock of, oh my gosh, I can, and it is a gift. And then, you go on, and it's like that with everything in life. And so it's important for me that people know that. It may not be dyslexia, it might be ADD, it might be something completely else that you're, going through that's an obstacle. But it doesn't have to be. And that is the most incredibly beautiful thing, a demonstration of love that God has for each and every one of us. So,
yeah.
I don't know if that answers.
That's beautiful. I love the way you highlighted that for us. And I think it would be really important for you to touch on what happened when you came back from your death experience and meeting God in heaven.
Right. And so for me, going through all of these lessons, the gifts, and then the earth and flames, and after the earth and flames, I thought we were done with the classroom time, if you will, and then I was going to get to stay and go into heaven. And that wasn't the case. That's when I received my new assignment, and when God said, you're not staying, child, you work for me now, remember? And when I was born, God had given me the gift of patience and beauty, and that's really important. I explain those things in the gift of the lesson, the lesson of the gifts, rather. But he said, before I send you back, I'm going to give you 2 more gifts. I'm going to give you knowledge and wisdom. And now when you go back, Erica, be quiet and listen to the people that I put in your life. And then when you speak, you will take patience, beauty, knowledge, and wisdom, and you will change millions of people's lives. And I just remember instinctively just trying to argue with God, like to form the thoughts and the words to argue my case to stay in heaven, because I knew I was home. I didn't want to leave that feeling. But as I'm getting that thought, I didn't have a choice, you see? So I remember being stuffed down like into this tunnel, which was completely opposite of the tunnel that was exhilarating and amazing the first time, right? This tunnel was like completely confining. It was tiny, it was dark, it was narrow. And at this time, for the first time in my whole experience, I didn't feel this connection to God. And it was so empty. I was so empty. And it was so slow going down the tunnel that at one point I came to a stop. And that's when I had a whole thing of, gosh, he said, I'm going back. My new assignment's down there and it's Earth. So I thought I was going down this tunnel to Earth, and I'm just trying to deal with these feelings of I can't feel God. I stopped. And then what ended up happening was I was taken out of the tunnel, and I had a whole lifetime experience on the edge of hell. Wow. So I had lessons I needed to learn there. So I went to the edge of hell, learned these lessons, then make my way eventually back to this tunnel. Again, time doesn't exist, so I can't even begin to fathom how long I was actually there for the human aspect of time. But when I did manage to get back into the tunnel, eventually I got back into the emergency room, And, I was on the ceiling, and I remember looking down on my body, my lifeless body on this gurney in the emergency room. And I remember seeing my husband, who was sitting in a chair and just like crying over my body. And I remember the first thought was, okay, there's no way I can do this. I can't do this. I started panicking. I'm like, there's no way I can fit myself back into that body. I knew that was me, but again, this was really me. And I knew I was so much more than what was in that lifeless shell. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I knew I had this assignment, and I knew I needed to listen, but I didn't know. I was just really scared. I didn't know how I could get back in there. And, God had sent 3 beings to me that helped me do that. And there's a whole story about that in my book. It's revealed what the beings did with me. But I went back in, even though I said I wasn't going to. I had to go back in, and it's one of those things where leaving the body was completely awesome and exhilarating, but getting back into the body, okay, it hurt really bad. I'm just gonna say, because it was like it was like I couldn't unfold my complete self. I felt like I was being shoved into this small compartment, and I didn't know where to all put myself, and it was confining. It was completely confining, okay? And so I came to, and at first I didn't have a voice. I couldn't use my voice. And so the doctor, the attending physician in the emergency room, they went ahead and they admitted me to the hospital for observation. I had a lot of health issues, and I wasn't very stable. And so they admitted me to the hospital. And they had told, my family, she's in good hands now, she's back, and we'll take good care of her, go get rest. So everyone left, and I was in my hospital room, and I was in and out of consciousness until that next morning. And that's when the attending physician had come into my room, and, good morning, Mrs. Mckenzie, how are you feeling today? And I mean, it was one of those things where I remember reaching for the pink bedpan. It was like a little kind of kidney-shaped bowl for vomiting, because all of a sudden I felt like I was just going to vomit. I couldn't even control it. And I'm reaching for that pan to vomit, and instead of throw up coming up, it was my voice. And it was like it was uncontrollable. It just came out, and it was like, doctor, oh my gosh, sit down. I have to tell you, I've just been to heaven. I've been with God, and these are all the things that I need to tell you. And because I was terrified that I would forget, and I knew everything I had been through, it wasn't just for me, it was for, all of us, because it was in hopes to help. There were so many things I felt that people could benefit from learning. So I didn't want to forget anything. And the poor doctor, oh my gosh, I remember seeing the doctor's face, and, the doctor came in to do the health assessment on me. But as I started to reveal that I had just been in heaven, been with God, had these experiences, I saw all the color drain from the top of his head, almost like one of those the thermometers, the old days outside telling the temperature, just like losing the color. And I lost him. I could just tell. I mean, he didn't even do the health assessment. He just left the room. And it was like, oh my God, no, it's like, okay, this is like so important. I can't believe this is happening. It's falling on deaf ears. Well, the nurse at the time had been charting on me in the hall. The door had been open, and she heard everything that had transpired in the room. And she came in, and she quietly shut the door, and she came over to me, and she sat by the bed, and she said, shh, be quiet and listen. I can't tell you how many times through my near-death experience, and then, through these next series of events, what happened, to be told, be quiet and listen. And to this day, I have to remind myself to be quiet and listen so I don't miss the messages and the signs. And she said, I heard everything that you told that doctor, and I believe you. But right now, you need to be quiet, child, because what's going to come next is going to be the hardest work you've done. And don't forget about your story. So, a couple hours later, that doctor returned with my husband this time, and they both wanted the best for me. And, it's really important for me to articulate to people that I don't blame the healthcare professionals for how things have unfolded. I don't blame my husband at all, nothing. It's not even about that. So it's important to understand that not how I looked at these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was they had discussed that even though I was 32 years old, so I was too old to have an onset of bipolar disorder because I had no family history of mental illness and I didn't have any mental illnesses. But even though I did, because I'm talking about God, this doesn't make sense. You know what you're saying? It's like having these symptoms of what society calls crazy, okay? Not normal, whatever normal is, not normal. And so what do? You fix it, right? Because when you love somebody or you care about somebody, you want to fix what's wrong. And so the doctor said, you know, well, you're in luck because your husband loves you so much. There's a opening at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Their psychiatric unit. There's one opening, one bed. And will you take it? You need to go. You can do it here in our psych department or you can do it there. But you have this opportunity to go. And I didn't have a choice, by the way. Even though they said I didn't have a choice. And so, yes, I was checked in against my will to a mental facility for several weeks away from, you know, my kids who were just babies at the time, 3 and 6. And it was one of those things that was really important. And I'm still learning to this day, you know, the importance of what happened to me. This is an epidemic global problem that is happening to so many other people. And again, not just from a near-death experience, but going through some kind of spiritual crisis, if you will, and these symptoms and trying to tell someone or get help for them, and then it's misdiagnosed. And, you know, in my case, ending up in the you know, mental psych ward. So yeah, it was one of those things that I had to learn, that because I was given, oh, go ahead.
Well, I just want to insert that the doctor, when I listened to your other interviews, you say that the nurse told you that the doctor was, she'd seen this before and that he's an atheist and doesn't believe in God.
Right.
So I think that's an important little piece.
Right.
You know.
It is important. And, you know, out of that, I've come to really respect that as individual as each of us are, in no way, shape, or form are we to tell people how they are supposed to be in life. And that's one of the important lessons, I think, of why we're here. Having respect for to meet someone where they are on this life journey is really the goal. And so while we want the best for people, we have to be careful not to step into that ego part and think that we know what is the best for that person. And how do you do that? What are you supposed to do? The answer is easy. Love. And when you love, you're putting that judgment down. You're not saying, this is what you are, this is what you have to do. You are holding a space of love to allow that person and meet them where they are, you see? And that's when more can be revealed to really help the person. And so that was the thing with the religion, that he was an atheist, fine. But when it crosses the line when a person tries to use their belief system to treat the problem and diagnose the patient. So because of what that doctor believed, he let that influence his protocol for my plan of care, my treatment. And so that was really important, looking back, to be mindful of, I think, for, you know, any kind of healthcare professional or any professionals at all in life when you're teaching something, is to be careful to not instill this personal bias you might have. That's fine, but don't let it, be careful what, you know, it lets you fall over into your judgment and your plan of care on someone else. And because what happens when you do that? You're too busy doing that, so you're not being quiet and listening. And being quiet and listening is not something that's just for Erica Mckenzie. It's something that each and every one of us can really benefit from using that tool.
There's two, I'm not a Bible-y person, but I'm very spiritual, and I was raised Catholic. So I think of myself now as a recovering Catholic because I keep what I love and I let go of the rest. And I keep hearing this over and over again. You know, every time you say, be quiet and listen, I keep hearing, be still and know that I am God. That's a quote that I always have held on to. And the other one that I kept hearing at the beginning of your story was what Jesus said, I am in this world, but I'm not of this world. And you can all do this and more, right? The healing that people would just touch his robe and, the stories from the Bible. So, and the other thing I kept hearing was you sort of said that in your story, that you knew when you left your body and you were in the tunnel, you knew that you were home, and but you didn't have a story in there. You just knew it. And the other one that I love is I say this a lot because I don't know why I know it, but I know that I know that I know that the Creator that created us is like, we can't even imagine. We're on this little three-dimensional wavelength. There's so much we don't know, right?
Right.
And so absolutely. I think that experience of you having to go through that, what was it, 30 days you were in the psych ward or the mental hospital, that brings credibility hugely to where you sit with that experience and how you deliver it in such a loving way, right? And that is
thank you for that. It wasn't all, what am I saying? It wasn't, I don't want to mislead people. It wasn't pretty. Trust me. It was the hardest work I had done up to that point. Because remember, I'm a nurse, so going through medical school years before and doing my psychiatric rotation and being with these patients and being told by our teacher at the time that listen, but not really, because they're crazy. And these delusions, these things that they're expressing, the treatment is medication. But knowing at that young age that spending time with those people thinking, okay, well, they can, maybe some of them can see and hear things and get downloaded things that others of us can't. But does that constitute them being crazy? Does that constitute them being medicated? And I sat there thinking about myself in nursing school. And as a child from 5 years old, that was normal for me, getting these messages, these downloads to help people. And as I was growing, gosh, those messages and things I was getting were accurate. And they were helping people. So what is this crazy we're talking about? So knowing what was being taught to me at the time in medical school, not blaming the teacher, because that's what she was taught, right? But knowing something inside of me said, wait a minute, that's not right. But it's falling on deaf ears. Now the tables turn. Years later, I die. Now I'm in the psych ward as a patient instead of a medical professional. And having that affirmation of, yes, absolutely. You knew it then, and now you know it. What do you do about it? So for me, it was a thing where I learned very quickly. At one point, I was on a list of, I think, like 9 different kinds of antipsychotic, medications. And it was like I was drooling. I couldn't, my vision was blurry. It was horrific. If, like with anything else, if you don't need the medication, it can be not only toxic, it can be fatal. And I was having this whole list of medications because what was happening with my assessment, good morning, Mrs. Mckenzie, how are you feeling today? Did you really go to heaven? Did you really spend time with God? Well, here's me. I was raised that you tell the truth, you respect your elders. So I learned very quickly, yes, I did. Yes, I went to heaven. Yes, I saw God. I had these lessons. Well, guess what? Then my meds would be up and I couldn't function at all. So I kept getting my medication increased for telling the truth. And I knew this happened. I knew what happened to me was real. But what I had to come to terms with was, I'm never going to get out of here. That's what I felt like. I felt like I was never going to get out of here. And being on those medications was completely suppressing my connection to God. I didn't need them. All right. It was hurting my body. And so what I had to do was I had to deny my entire experience to the healthcare professionals so that my medication eventually got titrated down to a low enough level eventually that they felt I was stable and I could be sent back home and released in the care of, attending physician at home to follow up on all the medicines I was on, and this new way of being normal. And what I did was I began to flush my medications as soon as I got out of the mental hospital. For 3 months, I flushed my medications instead of taking them without telling anyone. Because, see, I didn't blame my family, but I knew that I knew what I knew, and I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew that this happened. I knew I didn't need the medicine. What I needed was, instead of being given a diagnosis, a mental disorder, and given all this medicine that made me worse, I needed to just be able to detox. I needed medicine, tools, when I came back from the NDE, a safe place to share what happened to me, and coming up with healthcare professionals, and educating our loved ones on this spiritual crisis, this thing that's happened to Erica, and now she has these, symptoms which present themselves not only spiritually, and as you know, as a healthcare professional and working with people that have had these experiences, but these experiences are so profound that we see physiologic symptoms in this crisis. It's like having the fight or flight syndrome, but not just, acutely, but chronically. They're these side effects that we're having from these experiences. And so this whole thing of education really needing to happen with families, with the layperson, with healthcare professionals, so that we can hold this space. So yeah, I proceeded, I flushed my meds till about 3 months, and my husband came home one day and he said, "My God, Erica," he goes, "you see, please don't ever, I hope you don't hate me. I love you more than anything, and you're better than ever. You're back to your normal self. You see why we did this?" And I said, "Honey, you better sit down, because there's something I need to tell you." And so, God love him, 25 years later. Yeah, so for me, it was a thing where I didn't have time to sit there and be a victim, to blame, to point the finger and say, that doctor should have done that, or, my husband shouldn't have done this. No way. It was like, okay, I get it. This is a real problem. It happened to me. Now what am I going to do about it? And so really, since 15 years, I have been doing that. I've been healing my body, mind, and spirit, but mostly learning about how to love me. Who am I? Fixing that so that I can get to that point of, and helping others. Because we all want to help each other. That's great. But guess what I learned? You have to give yourself permission to help yourself first in loving yourself, right? And doing your work so that you can help on to the magnitude and the level that you were designed to while you're here. However that looks is different for all of us.
And, people like yourself and Anita Morjani and, so many other people that are telling their stories and getting that information out there, waking the world up. It's really, really powerful work, and we're really ready for the message. Right? People are waking up and changing and shifting, and I get to see that in my work. I work as I do energetic, intuitive healing work, and man, oh man, people are, sometimes what happens is I'll get everybody in the whole family because somebody will want that return to love and find out how to, be in their true essence and have that ripple effect. And like, I'll get the skeptical other family members that are just like, I want some of that Kool-Aid,
Right? Well, it's true. And once you've been around something like that, and you're a part of knowing there's so much more, and it's such a wonderful feeling, that vibrational level, then you do. I think that a lot of times we seek it out and we want to feel like that too. And again, for me, it's so important that people know that, okay, Erica isn't this great person. She has this amazing thing happen to her. She's like special, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no. We are all so, so valuable. And each and every one of us, if you're living and breathing here on this planet right now, I'm going to tell you, you have a story. You are important. And, again, like you said, sometimes you've treated the whole family. People have contacted me over the years saying, I want that connection. I want to know who I am. I want to step in and use my gifts. I can't access anything. I can't hear God. God doesn't love me. I've heard it all. And it's like, if I could tell anybody anything, start with really taking the time to be with yourself and being patient. And sometimes that takes eliminating certain things for a period of time. For me, it was eliminating social media, meaning like television, or like being on Facebook a ton and things. I had to have a balance so that I could turn off the noise, right? And even with relationships, if there's a relationship that it's almost like you're going through the motions, but kind of step back and see, sometimes we're around things that are toxic to us. It's not just food. It could be a relationship, for example, that's really kind of draining us and preventing us to really being able to have that connection. And so I just want people to know that they really are that valuable to God, that they do deserve to have this connection and feel amazing and have this purpose and, act on it. Again, it's really about it, doing the work.
And look at the street cred you get from, having had that magnificent experience and then having to be completely doubted and, wrongly diagnosed. Right. Your street credibility is huge because you had to, that's where the rubber hit the road for you. You had to go through that. And so I really, really appreciate that you did write the book. Do you have a copy of it that we can show our viewers?
You know what? I had one copy in my house of my book, and I just had a medical conference. I attended here, a holistic one, just a few days ago, and I just realized that I gave my last copy away. I'm waiting for this. My life, just so you know. I'm waiting for my books. I ordered more, so I don't. It's so frustrating. I can't believe that.
I think it's really kind of sweet that you don't have a copy. I mean, look at that, eh?
What the heck?
So,
oh my gosh!
Well,
but I'm
let's
sending you one.
Let's tell the viewers how they can get a copy of your book.
Yes. If you go to my website, ericamckenzie.com. There's a link that you can click on, and it will take you to Amazon, and it's Dying to Fit In, or you can just go to Amazon and type in Erica Mckenzie or Dying to Fit In or Near-Death Experiences, and it should come up. And if you have a problem with it or anything, you can contact me on my website too and let me know. So yes, I so appreciate you and what you're doing and your mission. It's exciting to be able to collaborate with like-minded individuals and the energy, and just again, thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I have a little ebook that I created for people. There's been almost 2,000 people that have downloaded it off of my website. So if anybody wants to go and check it out and download it, my website is DanaLouiseWilliams.com. And Erica, I just want to thank you so much for everything that you're doing in the world.
You too. And again, I definitely want to get your book, and I want to get the link. I want people to be able to see that resource. Let's, help each other out. Let's get all the word out there of how we can do this together, elevate that consciousness of the planet. And so thank you.
Yeah, and return back to love.
Exactly,
That's what
right?
this is all about.
Answer.